Hey everybody, welcome to our YouTube channel. And in case you missed it, this is a queer book club, and we have one of our very first authors. When we started introducing the author series back in August of last year, Dr. Herukhuti. So I'm going to go ahead and have him introduce yourself. I'm the co-host of Queer Book Club, Auggie Rodriguez. I'm also the president of the board of directors here at BQAC. So, mind introducing yourself, Dr. Herukhuti, and of course, our lovely co host, Diva, afterwards?
Sure. My name is Herukhuti. I am an artist, educator, and author. My work is situated at the intersection of arts, culture, sexuality, and spirituality. I am the co-editor of Recognize, the Voices of Bisexual Men, as well as the author of my first book, Conjuring Black Funk, Notes on Culture, Sexuality, and Spirituality. The most recent author of the poetry collection, Race, Resistance, Love, and the playwright of the play My Brother's a Keeper, which is a Black bisexual drama and comedy. And as well have done work in the community through my center, the Center for Culture, Sexuality, and Spirituality, LLC. Good to be here.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Diva, you mind introducing yourself?
Hey y'all, I am Diva, exit the mall. My pronouns are she and they, and my resume is kind of shorter than that. I'm a drag queen and a hot mess, and the co-host of the Queer Book Club.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. And, we love having authors at Queer Book Club and just getting to know them a bit, getting to know a bit about their writing process, their own story. With that being said, everybody has their coming out story, and being bisexual, we tend to come out more than just once. Mind sharing one of your first coming out stories?
Thank you. So, as a person of African descent, I actually don't subscribe to the concept of coming out. What I talk about is inviting in, because Blackness is so hyper visible in the United States, the largest prisoner of war camp in the history of humanity, founded upon the genocide and land theft of indigenous folks, and the kidnapping and enslavement of African folks from the shores of Africa to develop the country. We tend to be hyper visible, so there's not a need for us to come out of anything because we're visible. We're public enemy number one oftentimes and targeted. So what I talk about is inviting in. When I invite people into my truth and my reality. And what that also does is it puts the focus actually where it should be, on other people. Do they demonstrate the qualities and characteristics that make them worthy of being invited into my truth, to be invited into knowing more and more about my experience, my reality, my life. And that comes in a variety of different forms and fashions and times. So inviting in is something that's really, really important to me as a concept. So I've invited in a number of people into my life. Oftentimes, early on in my life, it was um, I approached it as though it was some shameful secret or something to say in hush whispers. And now, as someone who works in a way that draws upon all of my lived experience, all of my social identities, I'm fairly known as someone who is sexually fluid, who is bisexual, who in the tradition of the Dagara people of Burkina Faso and Ghana is a bodeme in my community. Uh, and um, and so it's less about inviting in these days than it was earlier on. But I can talk to you about a time when I resisted inviting someone into my truth, and I was on a TV show that is has largely a Black audience, and it was on the topic of bisexuality. And the one of the guests asked me whether I was bisexual, and I chose not to answer that question. What I chose to do was to one say Google me, like I'm Googleable. So you, if you Google me, you'll know. But the other piece I said was that it's actually not any of your business unless you're interested in forming some form of erotic, sexual, or romantic relationship with me. And if that's the case, then you actually don't need to know if I'm bisexual. You need to know if I am interested in being sexual with you, because that's the water's edge of needing to know. Is okay, are you interested in me, and am I interested in you? And if so, then we can talk about how we can form relationships, and if we can form relationships, and if we can do that in a way that meets our needs, that respects our boundaries, and that edifies us.
Awesome. I love your concept of instead of doing coming out, inviting in, which is something totally new to me. Because I'm always asking people about their coming out stories just because it's such a huge umbrella term within the community. So I love that concept. So thanks for sharing. And I
Yeah.
totally get it. There's times where, you don't feel comfortable sharing people. And if you're been out for X amount of years, uh, then, you know, like you said, Google me. It's publicly known that I'm bisexual or lesbian or gay or trans or what have you along the whole spectrum of things within the queer community. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, you're welcome. And the coming out as a tactic was developed by gay men racialized as white who have a different set of social dynamics and conditions that affect their lives than Black folks. So they can be hidden in the ubiquitous sea of whiteness that is produced in white supremacy, where people are not particularized or otherized, you're just normal, you're normalized. And so for them, for gay men racialized as white, coming out means disrupting the assumption of their normalcy established by white supremacy. But as somebody that was never recognized as being normal in this society, then there's nothing for me to come out of or come out into. And so it's different strokes for different folks, pun intended.
You've either been an editor of certain works, actually, one of the works that you've done recognize the voices of bisexual men, along with Robin Oakes. I know I'm butchering her last name.
Yeah, Robin Oakes. Yep.
Robin Oakes, who's an awesome bicon within our community, respectively, and has done great work for the community. I remember when I came into my own acceptance of my bisexual identity a little over 4 years ago. My dear friend Lauren, she let me borrow the book, you know, and years later, last year, 2022, here we are in 2023, recapping our first queer book club meeting, and I get to meet you, and then next month in March we get to have Robin, share her story. So both of you have been very beneficial for me to like share, like be able to feel comfortable in my own skin and help me in those baby steps as a by baby as they would call them. So I just wanted to personally thank you for that, and showing that, the pretty much, taking away the stigmatization of bi men, whether they're trans or people of color like myself and you as well. So thank you
Mm.
for that, and I just wanted to share that personally with you.
You're
Uh,
welcome. You're welcome, and thank you for that feedback. It really means a lot. The work uh, recognize the voices of bisexual men. That anthology, any work that I do is really meant to be for community and to contribute in some form of healing and transformation and nourishment. And so it's really, really heartening when folks who have been moved by any part of my work when they share that experience. That's really, really important.
Totally, I agree, and it empowers individuals. And I remember I felt isolated at the time, and many folks, when they're coming into their own identity, especially within the queer community, they feel isolated. And when it comes to bi individuals, it's the same thing. When I went to my first Pride, I realized I'm not the only bisexual around. I see a bunch of folks with bi and pan flags, and I'm like, all right, they're one of me. I'm not alone. So thank you for that. But that leads me to my next question, with this book, along with recently Race, Resistance, and Love. How was your writing and editing process? And how did that look like?
Yeah. So with Race, Resistance, Love, I collected work that I had produced over a 30-year period as a poet and spoken word artist, and began to make some decisions about what I wanted to include in the book, much like I would as an editor, soliciting material from other folks. In this context of Race, Resistance, Love, it was my work that I was looking at, and that because it was over a 30-year period of time, I could also approach that work similar to that of an editor, where I had some aesthetic distance from the work. And once I had identified the pieces, then it was about deciding um, what the structure of the book was, how they spoke within the book to each other, how different pieces spoke back to each other, were in conversation. And so I started to then organize, and that's how the title actually came to be, Race, Resistance, Love, because as I was organizing pieces, I recognized that, oh, okay, there's a theme here, and there's a theme there, and there's a theme there. And so those three themes of race, resistance, and love emerged. Then I went into the individual pieces and began to work on them, to revise and edit, and to refine them. And that took an iterative process of me doing it, sending it to trusted members of my community and getting feedback, taking that feedback and going back in and incorporating the feedback, and then sending it back out for another review. So I did that several times to come to the final draft versions of the pieces. And even when I read, though, because as an African, we're deeply aware of and value um, the magic of the moment, and inspiration and improvisation. It's part of where jazz came to be. So while I'm reading, I may actually even amend or change a piece from the page in my reading of it based upon how I feel inspired, how it's hitting me in that moment as well. So there's that refinement editing work that's also happening even in the context of reading and performing the work.
Definitely, it's like improv. It's very theatrical. You're in the theater, you're reading the audience, you want to vibe and feel how their energy, and then you feed off of their energy. So even though you have something written, you might end up stating it differently within your diction depending on where you're at, and then depending on your feelings, and then you were touching on something earlier where you have to detach your work. I'm a filmmaker as well, and I know you're one of the creatives behind No Homo, No Hetero, and uh, that kind of leads me into like my next question. How's that? And obviously, looking into your process, you're able to somewhat detach your work. A lot of creatives, it's hard for them to detach themselves from their own work because it's their baby, they're cradling it to life, and birth, and wanting to see that. But how was the process of just creating that film with your co-collaborators?
Yeah, sure. In fact, before this, I was actually speaking with our director of photography about two other projects. Yes, the documentary film project uh, is a collaboration. So it's a part of the No Homo No Hetero collective, which is a collective of Black bi plus male artists who are committed to utilizing their artistic practices to support the end of racism and biphobia in the Black community. And so one of those projects of the collective is the film project, the No Homo, No Hetero film project. And David J. Cork and I have been collaborating on that project since about maybe 2017-ish, somewhere around there. And the detachment piece. So I am someone who straddles that line. I work on projects that are personally meaningful to me and that are connected to communities of which I'm a member. And at the same time, most of my work in some way is collaborative. And so there's some form of co-ownership of the process, if not also the product that happens. So I can also take a stance or take a position that uh, that allows me not to be all oh, holding on to and like, oh, it's my baby, not to be so precious with it, but to allow for the promiscuous engagement or the polyamorous engagement of the work of the process to yield work that is so much more than I originally had conceived of or thought of or uh, um yeah. And so with the documentary film project, the community has taken so much of an ownership of the work. We People have been waiting for the full feature film to come out for years now. And we've been working through the various challenges to make that happen. As you know, documentary films, they can be expensive. And coming from a poor working class background, it's not a lot of resources out there. And so and the resistance by traditional funding sources to fund work that is at this intersection of Blackness and bisexuality. There hasn't been a great pool of money for us to draw upon. So we've had to work on this. I've taken money from my own projects, my own speaking engagements, and put toward the project, those kinds of things. But we're at a place now where we're doing some pickup shoots, actually next month, and then going into post-production more fully in developing the film. So we're looking forward to the film being out sooner rather than later.
Diva, did you have any questions for Dr. Herukhuti?
Well, this discussion is wonderful. And I'm always left humble when I read your stories or I hear your projects because you speak from the heart, and what comes from the heart touches the heart. So I cannot thank you enough. Are you able to read some of your poetry from your poet book for those of us who don't know your work?
Yeah, I'll do Standing There Looking Good. Unworthy feelings pressed my fears against the rhythms of desire. I come unaware. Shame has taken residence in the slim crevices of your mind. Craving out a way to find pleasure, value in another man's body. Heart assaults me, breath leaves me. I am the lip that your tongue slowly traces, afraid, excited. I want to be everything that you are, climb inside your body, swallow down what you appear to be, feel the velvet warmth of you enveloping me. Cause damn nigga, you look good. Only means I think you are the man I'm not. Reflections of the mind don't stop the blood from flowing to gorge flesh. Erection-laden thoughts blow lust and passion into ears before bodies touch. Trying to man up while quivering against the confirmation of who we are not, who we want to be, will never be. 2 feet away and hemispheres apart, we hold ourselves at bay, remaining the nigga I should be while denying the nigga I am. I refuse you and myself. Can't get my head around how to love him or me fully. So I settle for what's left, retreat to the safety of everyday shit, doing our thing for the 1 millionth time. No big deal. We know this shit. Nutting, zipping up and leaving out, making the trip back tomorrow. So that time never produces more than what we're committed to swallowing. We never have to do any more than stand there looking good, knowing there's more to being a man than doing a man. That's standing there looking good.
Snap, snap, snap. My next comment, which kind of also leads into my next question. You've been both a radical and activist since the young age of 14, growing up in New York, being of African American descent, and that lineage starts with the roots of even your parents being involved with the Black Panther Party, and that their influences on your own life, and the stigmatization of being a person of color here in America. and just dealing with police brutality and whatnot. Uh, how was that for you? How did it develop, your activism, which also led around the same time your spiritual upbringing, I'm just curious to know, like, how was that for you, that experience at such a young age, and how it's developed you over the years?
Yeah, thank you. So my family, particularly and specifically the maternal side of my family, uh, gifted me a great education in uh, what now we call Africana studies or Black studies, uh, so that I was not just being exposed to the colonial education that I was getting and the white supremacist education I was getting in school. I was getting I was it was being balanced out by what I was getting at home. So I both had the blessing of the book knowledge of Africana studies, but also my family was active. So I got practical skills in community organizing and learning about Black liberatory struggle by observing members of my family. Yeah, so members of my family have been a part of the American Labor Party, have been a part of the Black Panther Party for self-defense, have been union organizers, and that was like the family business. It was what we did as members of my family. We served community. So it was actually quite interesting to then later in life make other kinds of connections as I got more connected with my own sexuality and gender and those kinds of things. So, for example, um, finding out that um, El Haj Malik El Shabazz, what popularly known as Malcolm X, had same-sex experience in his background. If you read the work of Manning Marable, the last book that Manning Marable worked on was dedicated to and focused on Malcolm's life and unearthing the subjugated knowledge, these lesser known things about his life. And so folks can read about Malcolm's bisexuality in that context. And then folks like Kwesi Balagoon, who was a member of the Black Liberation Army, the Black Panther Party, was an anarchist, was a tenants' rights organizer, like did all of this amazing, powerful work. Actually identified as bisexual, and people knew in the movement that Kwesi was bisexual and this radical, and that the politics that he was operating in had this intersectional dynamic where he understood that settler colonialism, imperialism, white supremacy, capitalism, and cis heteropatriarchy were oppressing people in this interlocking matrix of dominating systems. And so I got to see myself in folks like Malcolm X and Kwesi Balagoon in ways that I had already done as just a radical revolutionary and activist. But now this other piece is like, I can now understand a little bit more about their analysis and their praxis, because I understand how my sexuality, my relationship with gender and all those things informs my perspective, where I can be really, really invested and committed to justice in ways that folks who say that they are and a perform, it's like, nah, you're not really about that life. Like, you're not really, really about that life. Or recognize how my fluidity allows me a perspective where I can perceive things. I have a worldview that is different than just someone who is um, uh, um, on one thing. But I can see the interconnections. Malcolm could see the interconnections of things. Kwesi could see the interconnections of things in ways that other colleagues and peers could not, and actually cause some tension in their relationships with folks as a result. So yeah, that uh, foundation that my family provided in Black liberatory struggle and the Black radical tradition, um, I didn't have to leave in claiming and owning myself fully, because there were examples of folks who had done this work and were Black and bi plus at the same time. So I'm not someone who needs to model what I do after someone. I'm pretty clear about my own calling and the gifts that I bring to the world. But to have possibility models, to have ancestors whose wisdom I can draw upon and call upon. I can speak to them as a practitioner of traditional African spirituality. I can be in conversation with these ancestors and seek their guidance and pour libation to them and honor them for what they did to contribute to that ongoing project of Black liberatory struggle and the Black radical tradition.
That's amazing. Thanks for just sharing that, and then sharing about those who came before you and how they influenced you and your own journey and your own calling, and how it's allowed you to even influence, the generations that are coming up after you, like somebody like myself. So thanks for sharing that. Um, that brings me to our final question. Uh, you were talking briefly about still working on the No Homo, No Hetero series. Are there any other projects that you want to discuss in the future that you're currently working on, that you're excited about producing, that you can't
Yes,
disclose?
yes. So um for Black August 2023, Um, Black August is the tradition of acknowledging the various important events that have happened for people of African descent in the month of August, including the birth of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, who was the founder of the UNIA movement uh, and um, uh, and contributed significantly to the international Pan-African movement. So I'll be producing my latest play called In the Valley of Coming Forth for Black August 2023 here in Harlem, New York. And so I'm really, really excited about that. And the book, I'm still doing readings, and so if there are folks who would like a reading in their community, if there's a school group, community group, what have you, that would like to have someone come in and do some spoken word, do some poetry reading, I'm available to do that and still doing that work as well. And I also have some other ideas cooking up, but I'll save those for another time. But those are the publicly available projects that I want to highlight, for folks now.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing. Thanks for being one of our very first guest authors on Queer Book Club and reconvening just to put this on our YouTube channel. we're going to go ahead and drop some links in the description below on how you can find out more about their work, and, drop in the website as well, and a few different book links as well, if you have any interest about that. For the viewers here, if you mind just dropping a like on this video, it helps other viewers like yourself find our content. If you haven't, definitely comment if you've read Doctor's work, and make sure you subscribed. It helps us out, and we definitely have much more content on the channel. So thank you so much, everybody, for watching today's Queer Book Club. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.